Hello, I'm Shonda Witherspoon. Today my discussion is on Yellow Springs Military Hospital. When studying battles, I always took a great sympathy when hearing the stories of wounded and dying soldiers, only to imagine how awful their conditions were and the poor medical treatment that was provided. Commissioned by the Continental Congress, in 1778, General George Washington authorized the construction of a new military hospital at Yellow Springs, Pennsylvania, about 10 miles from Valley Forge. Yellow Springs Hospital was the Continental Army's first medical facility. And on May 13, 1778, Washington visited every patient there. Less seriously ill soldiers were cared for in the camp hospitals, but this hospital treated about 1,000 soldiers before the Army left Valley Forge. Briefly, the overall medical conditions in the country at that time was very grim. People with no medical training at all cared for the wounded and ill. There was a shortage of medical supplies, so much so that soldiers could not even get anything for pain. The dead was carried out of beds, and another soldier took its place without the bed sheets being sanitized or cleaned. More soldiers died of illnesses than wounds because of unsanitary conditions. If a soldier received a wound that required amputation, a painful procedure followed. Two men held the soldier down while the surgeon worked very fast. Because remember, there was no pain medication at that time. Soldiers were offered brandy and rum or a wooden stick to chew on. Soldiers rarely survived this, only 35%. While researching Yellow Springs, I came across a woman by the name of Abigail Rice. She was a Continental Army nurse who served on the front lines fighting disease for multiple years. She was an immigrant who crossed the Atlantic a quarter century before the War of Independence began. In the struggle to keep the Army alive, Abigail and her family played a significant role in the building and the maintaining of the workings of Yellow Springs Hospital. At first, it appeared that Abigail came to Yellow Springs only to support the soldiers, possibly to sustain their spirits. Yet her trips to Yellow Springs became more and more frequent, and soon she was medically treating the soldiers. Sadly, Abigail Rice paid the ultimate price for her service. During her time at the hospital, she contracted typhoid fever from a soldier and died in 1789, never fully recovering from this disease. At the time of her death, there were no records to indicate that anyone celebrated or honored her as service at Yellow Springs as a nurse. Throughout the years, during the Revolution, the Army Hospital struggled to obtain necessary medical supplies. Requested items like blankets, clothing, soap, liquor arrived periodically in sporadic periods. In May of 1780, the hospital's director, Dr. Otto, wrote to the Continental Congress that necessary stores for the sick are entirely exhausted. He also stated there is no money in hand on the commissary to purchase fresh provisions, so the sick have been obliged these several past days to eat salt provisions. There is but 6 days of bread left, and the gentlemen who have furnished us with these articles, as well as fresh meat, for the past 2 years have now refused to supply us any longer. Today, if you visit the historic site at Yellow Springs, you will find the ruins of the Revolutionary War-era hospital. The original structure, known as Washington Hall, became a spa hotel from 1781 to 1865, a classroom, soldiers' orphan schools, 1869 to 1912, an art studio, country school, 1916 to 1952, and a film production studio, Good News Productions, 1952 to 1974. After a fire in 1902, Washington Hall was rebuilt, but a final fire in 1962 destroyed the site. Historic Yellow Springs stabilized the ruins, and the Philadelphia unit of the Herb Society of America installed an authentic 18th century medical herb garden above the site. In 1987, both were dedicated as a Revolutionary War memorial during the We the People 200 celebration of the 200th anniversary of the Constitution. Thank you.